we're going to move on to the last kind of story that we're going to talk about here on the podcast. And this was a good one. This was going to be on the podcast no matter what, Brandon, just because I know how heated you get with this discussion of should he win, because we're looking to next year. Will Christian McCaffrey, running back / receiver, I'll say, for the Stanford Cardinal, will he win the Heisman this year in 2016-2017? And just in case you guys forgot, last year, McCaffrey, over 2,000 rushing yards, had 2,019 to be exact, averaged 6 yards per carry, had 8 tutties for the Cardinal as a sophomore, and then receiving had 646 receiving yards, 14.3 average per catch, and he had 5 receiving touchdowns.
You know, Ricky, I would really like to call this section of the podcast Heisman After Dark. You know, I think it really plays in well with what I'm going to talk about here. So
the after hours Heisman show.
Yeah. So, you know, was McCaffrey's Heisman loss last year due to the fact that nearly everyone was asleep while he was playing?
No.
Well, a lot of people are trying to make the argument that it was because the Pac-12 doesn't have a big enough stage, you know, in the afternoon, like Alabama has that stage in the afternoon on the SEC, you know, not the SEC network, but it kind of is. It's on
Fox Sports does have
CBS.
The late game, though, that's usually a West Coast game. Usually, though, it's Oregon and Southern Cal that get those games, though.
I will say, while I do believe that the timing may have something to do with it, you can't blame it all on the game time. To do so would be an incredible cop-out if I've ever seen one. And, you know, I would like to just put a couple of comparisons together. So I think Henry had the bigger games consistently throughout the year. Derrick Henry, last year, 2,219 rushing yards, 28 touchdowns. McCaffrey, 2,019 rushing yards with 8 touchdowns. Derrick Henry, receiving yards, doesn't matter. He's not a receiver. Not very good at all, actually. Next, McCaffrey, 645 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. Derrick Henry broke a record set by Herschel Walker. McCaffrey broke a record set by Barry Sanders. So they're right up there. Highest per carry average, Derrick Henry, 5.6 yards a carry. McCaffrey averaged 8.5 yards each time he touched the ball. The worst game for Derrick Henry, 27 carries, 95 yards, and a touchdown in a game against Arkansas. The worst game for McCaffrey came in the first game against Northwestern, 12 carries for 66 yards, 5 carries for 23 yards. So ultimately, there you go, folks. I gave you comparisons. Who is the better running back? Derrick Henry. Could McCaffrey be a better all-around running back, receiving out of the backfield, returner, because he plays in the return game? Sure, yeah, I'll give you that. Derrick Henry, the best overall running back. But,
do you want to know?
But, no, not yet.
Okay.
The last time that something like this happened was...
What exactly? The little guy from the Pac-12?
When the guy from the Pac-12 lost out to the SEC guy.
Talking about Andrew Luck.
Mark Ingram and Toby Gerhart.
Oh, okay.
When Toby Gerhart had 1,000...
Also a Stanford guy.
Yep. When Toby Gerhart had 1,871 yards and 28 touchdowns, while Ingram had 1,658 yards and 17 touchdowns, and Mark Ingram is the one that wins the Heisman, not Gerhart.
I thought you were going to say that it was also Andrew Luck, who he's finished twice. He's finished second twice in the Heisman voting, which goes to the argument of, oh, these guys play later, so the Heisman voters are asleep. I'm going to add something out there that kind of stirs the pot a little bit. First off, with Christian McCaffrey, I'm putting out the disclaimer. I love McCaffrey. I love what he brings to the game. Can run the ball. He's a receiver. Going to be a great asset to an NFL team next year. However, my comparison to him now and my comparison when we get to the draft probably won't change. He's a taller Danny Woodhead. Danny Woodhead is 5'8", I want to say 200, whereas Christian McCaffrey's 6'1", 201. So he's a Danny Woodhead that's virtually 3 inches taller than Danny Woodhead. That's what he is. Can run the ball, can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can also line up in the slot and be a wide receiver as well. Here's the thing I'm going to throw out to you, Brandon, and this is something that different kind of a context when I heard it on The Herd for Colin Cowherd. If you guys know, I love Colin Cowherd, and I listen to him almost every day. Different context with him, but I feel like you can apply this kind of a knowledge into the Christian McCaffrey. I can't even remember what Cowherd was talking about when he said this, but it's something that just resonated with me, and I'm going to relate it here to McCaffrey. Yeah, McCaffrey may be the best running back in the Pac-12, but put him in the SEC. Is he still the best? I'm not saying the stats that he racked up while going against Pac-12 foes. I'm saying put him on an SEC team against SEC defenses. Is he still the best running back in the whole college football? No. Guess what? Wouldn't even be top 5. Might not even be top 5 in the SEC if he's on an SEC going up against SEC defenses night in, night out. That throws that into the debate. The Pac-12 versus the SEC versus the strength of schedule. Screw times. Screw the time of day it is. That's what we should be focusing on. That is weaker than the SEC. So that kind of plays into why he may be up there. But I'm not trying to take anything away from him.
Well, no, but I think the thing is, though, is that in the article that I was reading, they were really trying to make a big stink about the fact that...
Are you talking about the one by Adam Rittenberg?
I don't remember who wrote the damn thing, but I'm talking about one on ESPN. They're talking about how, all the stuff where they're trying to rearrange the timing, and it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Because you know what? That's a bunch of crap. That is a bunch of crap. I think the best guy won. The best guy won. It was Derrick Henry. And I'm not saying that because he's on Alabama. The best guy won. He really did. He really did.
Now I'm gonna throw this in now.
That if Christian McCaffrey this year, if we're talking this year, McCaffrey probably has, if he puts up stats like he did last year for most of the year, he's going to need to do a little bit better than that. But he could absolutely have a shot this year. Absolutely, he could.
I'm just
saying, to say that it's a timing thing, it's bull.
Well, let me throw this out there. This is a quote from Stanford coach David Shaw that they used in this article, the one that you were talking about from Adam Rittenberg. The quote from Shaw says, and I quote, "I don't think it's a myth, but there's no man behind the curtain, no organized East Coast bias that's keeping the West Coast down. There are some built-in hurdles that we have to fight on the West Coast," end quote. What do you think about that? Are there hurdles for the West Coast? Not in particular the timing of the game, but what Shaw said, are there hurdles for the West Coast?
Yeah, they're not as exciting. They're not. I mean, people don't. I'm being serious.
Brandon just pissed a lot of fucking West Coast football fans off.
It's not as exciting. You want to watch football? What's the game that you want to watch? You want to watch Arizona versus Colorado? Fuck no. You want to watch Alabama versus LSU.
Here's what we're
That's
getting
what
to.
you want to watch. And I know I just gave a completely lopsided comparison.
You know what I'm going to do, Brandon? I'm going to take what you're saying, and I'm going to translate it for the listeners out there.
For the viewers that can see us.
For the viewers out there. Well, the ones looking at the logo on YouTube, that could be. But for the listeners out there, I'm going to take what you're saying, and I'm going to translate it. Look at the Pac-12. Who was the best team in the Pac-12 2 years ago in the first year of the college football playoff?
I don't know. I don't watch them.
Who was it? Who lost in the national championship game to Ohio State?
Oregon.
Has Oregon been a team that has been, this is a good team, like smash mouth football, they play football to what you think? Or could they be described as a team that won their conference on a gimmick?
Here's really what comes. This is really what comes out of it.
Brandon.
What?
Let me finish. I'm not done. Oregon, to me, I'll get it clearer out because you obviously want to go on with your point. Oregon, to me, a team that they won their division. They won their conference 2 years ago. But they are a team that many could see they have won because they found a system that worked, a gimmick that worked in their conference to win the Pac-12. You go to the SEC, you go to the Big Ten. What is it? Smash mouth football. Two guys just saying, you know what? I'm going to go and hit you as hard as me. I'm on the side of you, Brandon. I'd rather watch a game that is fucking Michigan and Ohio State in the big house that ends up being 28-21 than a game like, I'm not even going to use the West Coast. I'll use Baylor TCU. The 65-55 shootout. I don't want to see that. I want to see Ann Arbor, big house, Wolverines, Buckeyes, smash mouth 28-21 game. That's what I want to see as a football fan. That's what it gets to. And that's the thing that can play in here because of the gimmicks that you can see on the West Coast.
I think that it comes down to, what do people want to watch? And I don't know. In all honesty, I think that, if you want to, you should put some of these games in prime time. If you want McCaffrey to be, you get him in prime time.
Then they're playing at 5:00 on a Saturday, Brandon. That may be too early for the West Coast.
It's not too early for the West Coast. Gosh damn, what do you guys need to be spoon-fed? My gosh, just get out there, get into the time slots that are going to get that people won't be sleeping. As I was saying to Ricky before we even came on the podcast, a lot of these games being played about 9-10 o'clock at night on a Saturday,
11 o'clock on the East Coast
for a long time. What are we doing on a Saturday? People are out probably drinking. They're not watching that game.
Well, they could if it's on at the bar they're at.
But are they really watching?
No,
they're like,
they're talking with friends.
Oh my gosh, it's a big play. Who did it?
Oh,
I don't know. And if they know who did it, they forget in the morning. You know what I'm saying?
They drank so much last night. But no, to me it gets down to, like I said, you get the West Coast that's like, not all the teams on the West Coast are gimmicky, but I'm using Oregon as the example. They found a gimmick that works, that high-flying offense. And, I mean, it's cute. I watched it once. It was like, okay, that was cool. It beat Jameis Winston pretty badly, which I was excited about because fuck Jameis Winston. But really, more than not, I'm going to watch the game that's two teams slugging it out, Alabama, LSU, that ends 35-24 or 35-28. That's just that big, just kind of smash mouth, two opposing, like unstoppable force meets a movable object kind of team. Look at even Boise State. I know they're not exactly West Coast, but they're West enough. How did they beat Oklahoma in that bowl game many years ago? Gimmicks. They used a Statue of Liberty play. They used a gimmick to beat a Power 5 team. Yeah, they get the win. Yeah. Was it cool to watch on SportsCenter? Yeah. But it was a gimmick. That's what the West Coast to me is, gimmicks, whereas the East Coast is smash mouth football. Now, is that bad? Yeah. The people like some things different in the East than people do in the West. It's just how we are, and most of the voters will have that East Coast bias. That's how it's going to be.
And I don't have anything against, West Coast football. But the problem is that now because McCaffrey didn't win, we try and go back and figure out, well, why didn't he win? Because his stats clearly were good enough. Well, no, they clearly weren't. Because if he only had 8 total rushing touchdowns and 5 total receiving touchdowns, and he had a couple of touchdowns in the return game, but I really don't even look at the return game. No returner is going to be a, Heisman winner.
Unless you're Desmond Howard.
But that's what I'm saying. But not a full-time returner.
Yeah.
Not a full-time returner.
Well, Desmond Howard was a full-time returner. He was one of the best, though. Like, to win the Heisman as a returner and a corner, you have to be like an impeccable, like, I'm setting records as a returner.
But he's also a corner too.
Yeah.
He's not just a returner on special teams.
Nobody's just a returner.
Devin Hester probably could have been just a returner. He wasn't good at much else.
He was technically a cornerback.
But he was really, really good. But McCaffrey, his yards maybe total are more than Henry, but touchdowns nowhere near it. Mm-hmm. Christian McCaffrey is a damn good player, and I'm not taking a darn thing away from him. But when people are trying to then take it away from Derrick Henry and say, "Oh no, what are we doing? We should." How did McCaffrey not win? He should have been the unquestioned number one. And now people are going back trying to find. Well, maybe it's because our game times aren't at a good time. Oh, for Pete's sake, people, come on. That could play into it. Maybe 1%, but the other 99%, I don't think so. I think that I really get irritated, as you can clearly see, when people just try and make excuses after the fact. Reactive excuses. I think that's kind of childish.
And before we end this, I probably should have brought this up sooner. Somebody's probably already typed in the comment section, but if you did, shame on you for not waiting for me to make this point by when we ended the segment. Some of you may be saying, yeah, but guys, Marcus Mariota won the Heisman. He was a Pac-12 guy. It's not impossible for a Pac-12 guy to win the Heisman. However, the one thing I want to kind of remind you of is how good Marcus Mariota's 2014 season is. You might be saying, yeah, well, Ricky, you're saying that Oregon's a gimmick. Look at this. The quarterback won the Heisman in 2014. Yeah, but he had an impeccable season. He was averaging, to me, 2.5, maybe 3 touchdowns a game. How many interceptions did he throw all season? 4. He threw 4 interceptions all season. Had a touchdown to INT total of 42 touchdowns to 4 interceptions and threw 4,454 yards. He basically played Madden in 2014. That's what Marcus Mariota did. Oh, and don't even get me started on the 15 touchdowns he had on the ground and the 770 yards he had on the ground as well. That's why he won the Heisman, because he had one of the best seasons for a dual threat quarterback that I could ever remember in my life. I see 42-4 touchdown interception ratio. Fucking take the trophy. You earned it. Just take it, because only 4 interceptions all year. That's why he won it. So that's for the people that are going to throw out Marcus Mariota won it, so the Pac-12's not that much of garbage. And we're not saying the Pac-12 is garbage. We're just saying that take Christian McCaffrey, and this is my point. Take Christian McCaffrey, put him on a team in the SEC. He's not even top 3, maybe not even top 5 in that conference.
Yeah, I just think that McCaffrey's stats, when you talk about Mariota's,
inflated because of the conference.
And what I'm not even saying that, is that those stats are incredible stats. Mm-hmm. Those are incredible stats.
Video game numbers.
But McCaffrey, he didn't even have those type of stats. He did really well, but not near anything like that. Obviously, people would say, yeah, he's a running back. Yes, I understand that. But only 8 touchdowns on the ground. Now, if he had 18 touchdowns on the ground, 11 receiving touchdowns, then it's okay, This guy really, really had one hell of a season. But he didn't do that. He did not do that. And I'm not even ready to call him my favorite for the Heisman this year. Because
you ready to crown his ass?
Because if Leonard Fournette comes back the way that he did last year for most of the year, playing Alabama brought him down to ground level, but he was flying high each and every week. Also, Deshaun Watson, if he goes back to what he was doing last year, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there. Nick Chubb, if he gets on track after the injury last year. McCaffrey's going to have some very steep competition. And yes, he's very good. Christian McCaffrey, very, very good player. And I enjoy watching him. But at the end of the day, he does not have it made for this season. He does not have the clear-cut number one favorite for the Heisman this year. A lot of competition. It'll be a fun season.
Well, that is going to do it for the Primetime Podcast this week. You can go and tell us down below in the comment section what you thought of this segment or any of the segments on today's show. If you're listening to us on SoundCloud, go ahead, hit that repost and that little heart button. If you're on YouTube, go hit that like button. If you're new, go hit that subscribe button. But if you want to give us a little bit extra support, you can go check out our Patreon page. It's just a way for you to earn some cool rewards, help us hit some goals that we're trying to obtain, and like I said, give us that little bit of extra support. Patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Ricky Widmer. Brandon is at young_swan19. Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. It's the same thing on Snapchat. Sean, our social media guy, is doing a bang-up job. I want to thank you guys all for listening. Please come back to Most Valuable Podcast more often, as we got some great shows and some great podcasts for you. But that's going to do it for the Primetime Podcast. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this MVP podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Most Valuable Pod for more great podcasts.